Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Welcome to the video. Appreciate that you're here. Let's have a little chat about CKF Evo knives. We're going to call this, I don't know, revisit, re-review. I don't know how much actual reviewing I'm going to get into. I'm just going to do my usual thing where I just ramble, I talk. Please provide feedback, your opinions, what you think. So the first Evo I ever bought was months and months ago. I forget exactly when. I picked up one of these bad boys, the DLC Evo, and this was when full Evo hype was. Grab my oil rag here. Full hype was in swing, and these things were popping off, and everybody was buying them. And I picked it up, and I liked it, but I didn't love it, and I sold it. And I was pretty happy with that decision for a long time, but then I started to get sad and I missed it. And so I found one for a reasonable price. It wasn't a steal, but it was a pretty decent price, less than I paid for my original one and less than I sold mine for originally. So that's pretty good. And so I grabbed this one. What number is this? 107. So that's pretty cool, pretty low. What number is this one? 133. So I picked up this one, whoa, sorry about the camera shake there. We're not in the middle of an earthquake. So I picked this one up, and I kind of liked it. I liked it, and I appreciated it. And I picked up another one. I got the PJ. So when I was looking at these were the two I was stuck between. I didn't really care for the dark wash with the micarta inlays, and I didn't care for the one that was the hand satin with the, I don't know, was it Damascus pivot collar, whatever it was. Didn't much care for those. These were the two I was deciding against when I picked up my first one. I actually really kind of just generally like the PJ. PJ stands for plain Jane, right? This is what you would consider to be the base model. But this one, I mean, it has a lot of really cool stuff going on. I really like those grind lines coming through. I mean, it looks like hand ground. I know it's not, but it looks hand ground, right? It's the type of grit that you'd see on hand ground blades. And then it has the alternating flats here, which looks to have a light acid etch with stonewashing on it. And then it's got the cool, almost wood grain on the handles. Also looks to be lightly acid washed and stone washed. It just kind of looks cool. I really like this one. But the DLC one is also cool, and it's also very unique because we've never really seen DLC implemented quite like this. When this actually came out, it blew people's minds because they were not expecting this, and possibly for good reason. The fact that it's a satin finish across this whole thing, and then it's DLC'd on top of it, gives it this shiny DLC finish. And the downside is it's super, super slick, and grease and gunk and fingerprints just really stick out on it. But it's so cool to see the grinds kind of come through on that DLC, see the same texture come through on this DLC across the whole thing. So on the latest release from CKF, Rotten Designs, Evo 3, they're doing the, the V4s now. Tonto, they brought the DLC back, but I believe they're doing a similar DLC on the blade, but the handle is going to be a blasted DLC. So something more like this. I think this is a PVD of some kind, but it would look somewhat like this, where it's more of a matte finish. Makes more sense from a utility standpoint. It's not going to be as slick, right? It's going to be more usable. But this one is just kind of cool. And when I found that out, I'm like, man, if I don't pick up one of these shiny DLCs, I might not be able to again in the future. And so I jumped on and picked it up. And when I got this, it kind of, I don't know, I looked at it with fresh eyes. So the first one I got, I was a little bugged with the Evo for a couple of reasons. One, the whole China debacle, that these might actually be made in China, or at least mostly made in China and then shipped to Russia. When I found that out, it kind of bugged me. Because I'm like, what? That sucks, right? I mean, and it's not that I have anything against China knives. I have some. I prefer American, but I will pick up China-made knives. Obviously, I've featured a bunch on this channel. I do like something obscene a lot, so I will buy them. It was mainly the concept of it being kind of hidden, right? Because they don't admit it. CKF doesn't say that they have their stuff made in China. It's more like some of it's conjecture. Some of it's kind of logically things line up to be that way, and some of it's like, secret rumor and back deal information that seems to indicate that CKF actually has the majority, if not all, of the manufacturing done by a Chinese manufacturer. And then it's either just drop shipped to Russia or maybe sent to Russia for assembly or final tuning or something. But anyway, so that kind of bugged me. I didn't like that. Still bugs me. But I apparently got past it a little bit. The other thing that bugged me was just how similar this is to the Strider. I kind of thought, it was a ripoff of the design. And honestly, when you connect the dots, it does seem like the name Evolution, right, which is what Evo is short for, refers to this being an evolution of the Strider concept, right? And it really does. And I mentioned this in my original video, if you take this knife, or if you take a Strider, and you kind of say, well, let's run this through a process that would modernize this design. What would that be? What would that look like? And it's these kind of things, right? Lock bar insert, ball bearing pivot, some tweaks to the overall design. Let's get rid of the stark angle back here and soften that up a little bit. But keep the principal design things, right? The stop pin, the big stop pins in the actual tang, the concept of having less parts kind of comes through, the hole, which is just slightly tweaked, but the overall skinniness here, how it gets wider here, it is like an evolution of a Strider, and that kind of bugged me quite a bit. But then I kind of looked into some of the details, and I looked into the maker of the knives, Mr. Sorensen, and I realized it's less of like a him copying and more of like a love letter in a lot of ways, because he is of the Strider community, right? He is from the Strider community. He got his start kind of doing regrinds on Striders. That's his legacy is Strider. So it's not that he is some outsider who saw the Strider design and said, ooh, let's modernize that and kind of lift the parts I like and beef up the other ones. He paid his dues, I think, for the most part, right? He is a Strider fan, and he got his start working on Striders and loving Striders and being part of the community, of which he is still involved, and of which I think he still will do regrinds and stuff on Striders. So that changed my opinion on that a little bit, made me a little more accepting of it. Kind of similar to Rip Knives. What is his name? Oh, I just had it in my head. I lost it. But Rip Knives, similar story, right? He started out in the Strider industry. He started out doing regrinds on Striders, and then he started making his own knives. Now, granted, his knives bear little to no resemblance to the Strider aesthetic, just as a side note of people that have kind of started in that community and gone on to be successful makers. Similar type story with Rotten Design. So that kind of softened it up. And then I just started to kind of appreciate the concept, right? Because it is a really cool design. I really love how this blade drops down here. It's very impressive, very cool, very well done. The finishing you get on this is very custom-esque, or at least very mid-tech-esque, right? It does go above and beyond your standard kind of manufacturing, and you get these details, and I think it adds to a really cool package. And then you get stuff like, I love the concept how they throw in hardware on this. It is just chef's kiss. Absolutely love it. They do everything, right? Pivots, all the screws. They do all the standoff collars in here. They do the lock bar insert. You get a whole new lock bar insert. If you were to ever wear this out, if your detent ball were to ever shatter or break or fall out, you just swap out that whole piece. You don't have to send it in. You don't have to pay for shipping. You don't have to wait. You just swap it out. And I love that. I wish more knife manufacturers would do that. It is just so nice to know you have that stuff. And I've talked about this before. They do that because they need to. Because this is made overseas. Regardless of where you believe it's made overseas. So the concept of shipping it in to get it fixed is not realistic, unlike this Emerson, which is out of California. I can send this into California, but it's going to take me 2 weeks. I got to pay shipping to and from to get it fixed. And let's be honest, 9 times out of 10, if you have a problem with a modern, well-made knife, it's going to be hardware related, right? It's going to be something like that. It's not, there's little else that can go wrong unless you go out of your way to mess it up, right? You would have to specifically mess this frame up somehow, or you'd have to have this involved in some sort of catastrophic accident, fell out of your truck and got dragged onto the concrete, or break the blade. You know, and a broken blade's a broken blade. But the most common thing that happens with modern knives is people strip out or lose screws. When they take it apart, they disassemble it. And then secondly are things like broken ceramic balls, whether it's in the pivot. Oh, by the way, this knife also comes with full ceramic pivots, as well as the steel collars that go in there, like just everything, all the hardware. Some knives will come with extra hardware. Usually it's just body screws and maybe a pivot. This comes with everything, right? Everything except for a spare blade and a spare show and lock side and pocket clip. Everything else, oh, and backspacer. Everything else it comes with, which I love. I think it's really cool, and I think that helps add to the value of the knife. One thing that's still somewhat I don't love is I don't actually like this with the ceramic pivot. I think some people have swapped them out for phosphor bronze. I'm contemplating doing that. We'll see. I don't know, non-flipper, I just don't really want it. You know, I like kind of slow rolls, and it almost feels, especially this one because it's slick, it almost feels not controllable. Like you unlock it and it just falls so effortlessly, oh my gosh, that it's, I don't know, it just makes me a little uneasy, and I just don't like the feel of it. You know, flicking it open's cool, but other than that, I would prefer to have a little more slow roll ability. This one, you can a little bit more, just because it's not as slick as the DLC, but it's still, you know, it's, I don't know. I like the slow roll. I do, in some knives. Now others, like this one, that's a flipper, you know, I like that it flicks open, and something about the thumb stud, I like this one, and it's fine. I wouldn't want to really make this one a slow roll open, but this one, it just, and maybe because it reminds me of a Strider, maybe it's because it's not a flipper, I just don't know if I love the ball bearing pivot. Everything else though is good. The detent is perfect. Some people have complained it's too light. I don't know if theirs was too light and mine just aren't, or if it's a preference thing and they like it stouter, but like, I mean, both mine, really good detents. Like, you know, you really got to shake it to get it to pop open. I think it's like, it's tuned in perfect. And both of mine too are just, you know, the machining, you just got to appreciate it. It's done so well. And it's got this cool design. I like the weight. It's got some heft to it. One of the complaints of something obscene from me is it's a little too light. I get the concept. I appreciate it. But they just do, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, too much milling on it. I like my knives, especially titanium frame locks, to have a little bit of heft to it. And sometimes they get a little too light. I've got a V4 on order, and I'm worried it's going to be really too light for me, because they take this same basic thing and they've contoured it, which removes material, and then they've done inlays on both sides, which removes material. It's going to be like featherweight. Anyways, so the Evo 3. Point of this video isn't really an actual review of the knife. I touched on a few things. It's more of a concept of how you can go from not really liking a knife and having issues with it, and then, you know, kind of revisiting it, letting it cool down, and then you end up with two of them and actually really like both of them. So it can happen, you know. It is what it is, and it's just cool to look at them like this. I mean, how cool is that? Like yin and yang, you know. All right, guys, I'm out. Let me know down below. Have you ever had that happen where you don't like something, and then you kind of look at it later and all of a sudden you really like it and you have two of them or more? Let me know down below. I'll talk to you guys later. I'm out.